This episode is brought to you by John Blake Sales Breakthrough Solutions, helping you to at least double the amount of leads that you get that convert into paying clients.
Welcome to the Master Dealmakers Secrets Podcast. And now, here's sales growth strategist, John Blake.
All right, so I have got Trevor Toe Cracker Crook with me this morning. We have just been reminiscing about where we may have crossed paths previously, but I'm excited to have Trevor on this morning because I want to talk about offers. And Trevor is a master copywriter. He's been at it for a long time. He's worked with dozens and dozens and dozens of companies and created massive shifts in their sales, millions of dollars worth of extra revenue. And so I knew that today would be a really good conversation. So good evening where you are, mate. Good morning where I am.
Yeah, welcome, John. Down under. It's morning and it's evening here in Panama.
Yeah. So I've just been making plans to move to Panama because apparently there's good waves there and it's a cheap place to live, and I can't work out any other reason why I shouldn't go there.
Well, there is a taxation reason as well, but you know,
what was that?
Won't go there. There is a taxation reason as well.
Oh yeah, well that's kind of where I'm. You know, when you live in Australia, that's an absolute consideration. I do have a couple of kids that might have something to say about that, but you know, give me a couple of years.
I'll bring them along.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm sure they'll have fun. So, mate, you've got a pretty interesting background. You know, in commercial finance, worked for banks. At 36, made the leap. Have studied with Dan Kennedy. That I've obviously also a big student of Dan Kennedy, and jumped into the world of copywriting and business growth and strategy. So you've got a stack of experience. So I had a couple of questions that I was just going to ask you just sort of to get rolling. How'd you get the nickname?
Yeah, I need to have that tattooed permanently on my forehead. I've been asked that about 50 times in the last week, even though it's on my profile. But it's a good question, especially with the people that see the chrome-tipped toe cracker shoes and think it's from the shoes, but they occurred drunk one night in 2009 living in Vancouver.
Yeah.
So when I was sort of in my last year of being a commercial finance broker, in 2000, I'd bought this box of marketing stuff from Mal Emery after responding to his lead generation advert in the Sunday paper in Queensland where I was living, offering a free report, which I now know is a glorified sales letter.
Yep.
But I always knew when I quit banking, like paid employment in 96, to become a broker, that I wasn't going to do that for the rest of my life. And I always had an interest in marketing, but still didn't really have a clue what I wanted to do back then. But I loved the information that I was reading in these marketing manuals and copywriting stuff from, people we would know as the greats, the old dinosaur direct mail guys. And I was courting this 8-figure company, and basically to refinance them, but their parent company was siphoning off the profits. So whilst they were an 8-figure gross company, they had no working capital. They had a $900,000 hardcore overdraft with literally they couldn't spend $1,000 basically.
Wow.
So basically the average debit balance was $900K. And so I ripped them a new arsehole verbally and told them a few home truths about their business and pointed out their juvenile ways of doing business. And I was actually a customer of theirs as well at the same time. And I said, look, honestly, I just can't get you financed the way you're situated right now. I said, but I'll tell you this, if you increase your prices 10% overnight, 95% of your customers will not leave you, myself included. And you know what you're doing now in terms of gross, that'll solve your cash flow problems, basically. And it wasn't something that I came up with. I'd read about one of these manuals, can't remember who, but, I knew when to apply it. And that was sort of it. And a year later, I just get in the copywriting world And I get this full-page unsolicited testimonial letter from the managing director, basically sort of stating what I just told you. And he said, well, and we solved our cash flow issues. So I like, all right, I'm going to call you up on and want to know the actual details. And he said, yeah, we went from a $900,000 hardcore overdraft, the average cash in bank per day of $750,000. So 1.65 million turnaround, literally from that, 7-second marketing tip that I didn't create.
Wow.
It was like, thanks to your toe cracker ways, we solved our cash flow issues. And, when I got into copywriting, I wanted to create my own voice. I didn't want to be, a John Carlton or a Gary Halbert or a Dan Kennedy. I resonated with them. I took inspiration from them. I admired them, but I wanted to be me. And so I thought, you know what? Hey, Trevor, toe cracker Crook. I will personally brand myself as that, and that's what I did. That's all it was.
Yeah.
And then 8 years later, living in Vancouver, staggering home drunk from a bar one night, I saw these chrome-tipped snakeskin shoes, like really, really pointed. I mean, if you took someone around the neck, you'd decapitated, sort of.
Yeah.
And anyway, I got the shoes, and the rest is sort of, it just helps with the branding. But the name came from a client back in 2000, literally.
Yeah. Classic. Yeah, you got to love that.
Yeah.
Classic. Awesome. So, so financial leaks in most businesses. I mean, you've just brought one up. Not charging enough or not increasing fees, and I love that. I've just written that note down straight away. 10% increase in your fees, 95% of people will not leave. How many times have you seen that repeated?
Oh, well, I first told that in 2000. It's now 2023. And it still works because, look, and the only way it won't work, is if you're given, poor service, right, or providing poor products.
Yep.
Right. And either way, without increasing your prices, you're going to go out the back door anyway, sooner or later. But if you've got a good product or a good service, and you bump it up 10%, most people are going to go, you know what? Yep, that's okay. I'm going to still keep buying.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you can't bump it more, but just, even a business turning over $1 million, right, gross, it's an extra 100K. Now, let's say they only made, 40 grand on the bottom line. Where does that extra 100K go?
Yeah. Straight to the bottom line.
Straight at the bottom. It's cream.
Yep.
Right? Your operating expenses don't change. Your overheads don't change. That's just cream money. Yeah. So people could literally listen to this and go, all right, toe cracker, I'm going to put you to the challenge. And, when I did Shramko's first podcast a couple of years ago, literally had people implementing that and going, holy shit, this works, you know.
It's so simple.
Yeah.
It's
and that's
so
what
simple.
I like, being able to just look at someone's business, obviously the financial background, the interviewing, thousands upon thousands, literally I estimate roughly about 10,000 business owners during my 20-odd year banking career between banks and brokering, and pulling apart about 35,000 sets of financials.
Yep.
You get to understand business a lot.
Yeah.
And one of the keys in my banking and my lending days as a manager was that you'd look at 3 sets of financials, and any change income wise, expenses wise, 10% or more had to be commented on.
Yep.
In other words, you had to investigate.
Yep.
Right. It didn't matter whether I was signing it off or not, because if I was signing it off and the credit police came around, or the Gestapo, as we called them, they'd rip me a new one.
Yep.
Okay. So, what was interesting back then, before I had a clue about marketing, and I wasn't even armed and dangerous enough then to blow my own left nostril off, was that consistently, back in the old days, yellow page expenses would be reduced. Advertising and marketing costs would be reduced. And when I would ask the question as Mr. Bank Manager, I always got the same answer. Well, we tried that, didn't work.
Yeah.
Or now I know is you tried it because your copy sucked and your offer sucked, or you tried just one-shot mail. That's why it didn't work.
Yeah.
But don't blame the system or the marketing tool. Blame your own lack of ability in that area, or having the balls to invest in someone to do it for you.
Yeah.
So, I've just sort of taken that. I mean, that experience has obviously helped me to get me to where I am today, for companies, whether it's a small company or a company doing 7, 8, 9 figures.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. A couple of things that you brought up there. I mean, like in this country at the moment, inflation's massive. So, you know, if you add CPI to inflation, you know, you've got at least 5%, you know, per year already. So if you increase your prices by 10%, it's like, you know, most people are going to go, well, you know, everyone's got to, because in the absence of doing that, if you haven't got a really good handle on your P&L, in 18 months' time, you're underwater. And I've seen that happen with a lot of clients in the last 18 months, because we've had, you know, pretty big inflation in this country. And it's like, if you're not putting your prices up on a regular basis, that's what's going to happen. It's like, oh, people might not pay it. In fact, I remember I used to be the agent for Mambo for about 10 years. And I was the agent when we were selling a truckload of those loud shirts, you know, those obnoxious, you know, graphic rayon shirts. You know, at one point we were selling about $2 million just in WA.
Wow.
And it was, you know, it was a incredible ride. But I remember sitting in front of this guy, and, you know, the loud shirts were like you know, they were the jewel in the crown. You know, so everyone that came in to buy the range, that, you know, that was the thing that they were most interested in. And they increased the price by I think it was about $3.50. Right. And I got this buyer sitting in front of me, and he wasn't really a surfer. He'd sort of had a farm, you know, sold the farm, bought a surf shop.
As you
didn't really have much of a clue. pretty green. You can kind of get a picture of the sort of guy. And I'm standing there, and he looks at the prices. He looks up at me, and I'm like, what? And he goes, you put the prices up of the loud shirts. And I went, yeah. And I said, well, what's the problem? And he goes, they might not sell. And I looked at him and I went, they might not sell anyway.
Yeah. 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 It's look.
And it was the most incredible pattern interrupt. Like, and he just sort of went, yeah, right. And of course, it made absolutely no difference whatsoever. You know, like they sold out, we couldn't get any more. And, you know, all those people that ordered it wish that they'd actually ordered more.
It brings up a good point, because most people, you know, you know, and I'm not a huge lover of the word or term mindset, and I can't take credit for this, but when I was doing a podcast a couple of years ago, I had a guest on, and he's like, mindset is banned in my company. Right? He said, because why would you want to set your mind? Right? You want a mentality shift. The problem is most people's minds are set, and it's set in freaking quicksand. They can't get out of their own way, let alone get pulled out of the quicksand. And the amount of times over the years we were dealing with business owners, and it's like, yeah, same thing. Well, what if they won't, you know, pay? What if they do?
Yeah.
You know, like people going from doing free quotes, right? That most people in that sort of business to consumer market will do a free quote. Well, I teach them actually charge for it.
Yep.
Right. But position it in a different way, that it's not a free quote. And of course, sometimes you got to toe crack them in the ass to get them to at least test the charging for it stuff. But when they do, it blows them away. And I was like, well, how did that feel? Oh, I wish I'd done it years ago. Yeah, well, I can now jack the price up. And of course, what they find out is that the person who's actually paid for that previous free quote is much more highly going to convert to their offer.
Yeah.
You know, and this came about from myself really in 1999. I'd been broking since 96. And I mean, I was very good for my inside banking knowledge, being able to look at a business owner's loan statements, financials, assets and liability, and the security their current bank held, and tell them how much their bank was ripping them off, and tell them what they were worth in the marketplace. So I knew that once I did that, and people are fearful of their bank manager, because in my day we were called the God Squad, you know, because we played God. We either said yes to your loan, business loan, or no, and we said the same for your personal loan, same for your mortgage loan. So I knew how to present stuff. So of course they'd always hire me. Then I had a bit of a brainwave about 3 years too late. And I was like, well, why don't I start charging for this? So I literally went from doing it free, let's say the 1st of April, as an example. I started charging $750 this week. Got a reasonable take-up rate because most of my deals I'd broker were between $750,000 up to, over 10 million.
So that was $750 for a loan quote?
Well, $750 when I would previously do a report for free. I would assess how much the bank was ripping them off, right? And then 2 weeks later, so I started charging $750, and then I put it up to $1,500 a week later. So within 2 weeks, I went from doing it for free, like I'd done for 3 odd years, to $750, then to $1,500. And then 2 weeks later again, so a month after, I was charging $3,000. Bear in mind, this is back in 1999.
Yeah.
When that was $3,000, I got a much better acceptance rate,
higher
at
conversion,
$3,000 than what I was doing for free for 3.5 years before.
So I'm curious.
Then they would pay my fees.
So I'm curious, what sort of language did you use to position that?
Yeah. Okay. Whereas before I'd say, well, let me look at everything and I'll come back to you, with a bit of a report. Then I changed to a finance investigation report.
Nice.
I couldn't call it an audit because I wasn't an auditor, right? So finance investigation report. Okay. Now, these were people I know from my banking days when, a lot of clients, especially the Barron, $2, $3, $4, $5, $10 million would go to their big accountant, and the accountant would do some sort of proposal for them, provide the financials, list of assets and liabilities. And most of the time it wasn't worth the paper it was written on, let alone them being charged, $7.5, $10,000 for that.
Yeah.
I would literally take out the financials. I used nothing in what they put together because they were clueless about how to put a loan together. So this is like, well, hang on, back in the day, I should be charging for this. And just the change in the language, right? And I've done that consistently for clients over the years in many industries. Like I have so many favorite stories on this, but a classic was a guy in Ireland quite a few years ago now. I was in Ireland in Cork, meeting with him in a restaurant, and he's in the heating and insulation business. Right, typical business owner, double page spread in the local paper, business name at the top, at least 1/3, sometimes half of the ad taken up with a picture of his fleet because he thought bigger is better, which isn't always the case, right? And he's still competing on price like everybody else.
Yep.
So I said, all right, well, from the moment you get inside that homeowner's door, in other words, they've responded to your advertising, tell me exactly what you do, leave nothing out. So he's just rattling off like a parrot what he does.
Yep.
And he said something, and I was like, well, stop. I was like, rewind that bit you just said there. I want to dig into that. He parrots it again and keeps talking. I was like, mate, shut the F up. Like, seriously, stop. We're digging into this. And he's like, well, everyone knows that. And I was like, no. Your competition does. Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, your potential client, does not. This is the hook. This is the angle. This is going to give you the run on the market.
Yep.
I said, okay, so when you're there, so what he said was, in at least every home, there's a minimum of 9 areas where the heat escapes. So when the heat escapes, it does what? House is colder.
Yep.
Bills go up because you've got it. Right. I said, all right, from now on, from this day forward, you're no longer offering free quotes. You're offering a heat leakage and what do I call it? Heat leakage and inspection report valued at 197 euros. And you change your quote form to look like an actual report. All those things that you check automatically have a little box for them. The ones that were escaped, cross for fail, tick for success. All right. The report's designed for their home to fail.
Yeah.
And of course, what's the recommendation? You at your prices. No longer are you competing on price.
No.
Let your competition do that.
Yep.
And you just own the market. And that's the sort of thing that I do all the time for various industries. It doesn't matter whether you're a B2C, like a tradesman, or someone going to someone's house to measure blinds, gardening. I mean, I've just wrapped up a gardening sort of mentoring business with a UK landscape partner. And that's one of the things, the first things I taught them, right, was to, well, instead of going out doing quotes, right, offer this free garden assessment report valued at £297 and actually got the form designed. That's a massive, like, legal pad size form in triplicate. Same thing. Everything they look at is a score of 0 to 10. Right? It's design. In other words, the slope of the land, or the slope's bad, it's going to be a 1, maybe a 2. Accessibility might be hard, might be a 3, might be a 4. Something could be a 0. Recommendation, pay for a design fee. You know, and it just changed the market. So I got them doing that as neighborhood farming letters when they're on a, you know, on an actual job site, you know, drop out 20, letter 1, letter 2, letter 3, old school direct mail. And one of the partners, their first, I think 85 letters pulled in 290 grand in gross fees.
Wow.
Not bad when each letter cost them four quid to drop with a magazine that we did for them as well.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so that's the sort of stuff that's what can make you very different from the marketplace. And just recently, I've one of my clients that I'm a quasi or acting CMO for, was like, you need someone that knows email deliverability. So I was recommended by through somebody else, and you know, the young guy's good, right? And I was like, well, you need to be no longer you're just going, hey, I can look at it for you for free. You're now offering an email deliverability assessment report, and those fees range between $1,500 to $3,000 based on a few factors.
Yeah.
Right. Now, if someone's paying $1,500 to $3,000, getting a detailed report where it'll tell them what's wrong and how to fix it. Option 1. Option 2 is you can hire me. Option 3, you can take the report and get somebody else.
Yep.
Right. Because people think they have to do this free shit to win the business.
Yep.
No, you don't.
No.
All right. So that's what I love doing, you know, coming up with the offers like that and being able to look at how someone delivers their offer for their services and come up with a solution that makes it painless, simplified, and generally where they can charge a truckload more, as in, you know,
and they're adding value
maybe
too, right?
double. Yeah, people can see the value.
People are getting a clearer understanding of exactly what's required and why.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, you know, he's got one right now where I referred him to somebody and they were like, oh, we're used to free quotes. And I was like, this is how you respond to this one. Right. Because it's all sort of quite new. But, you know, I mean, he's the go-to guy for somebody in Australia that you might know the name of. I won't say his name, but looks after a lot of big e-com stores, right, to do millions of dollars. I mean, the guy I'm just talking about, he's the guy that the e-com store guys are, this is the guy that fixes email deliverability, you know, but he didn't know how to position himself, right?
Yeah,
well, now he does.
Yeah.
Right. You know, I mean, it can be so simple. I mean, when you have those sort of changes to somebody in their business, the ripple effect that has on their life, their loved ones, and everybody else that impacts is quite astounding.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've there's a couple of things that you've brought up, you know, just the assessment's massive. I've actually got a couple of landscaping clients. So the garden assessment report certainly made my ears prick up.
Yeah, well, it's done it all, and I own the copyright, so we can have a chat. But here's what's interesting, right? That came about from a lawn care client that that I met at a Ted Nicholas event in Tampa in 2009. Early 2010. I went to Ted's event as his guest, and this guy's like, "Hey, can I buy you lunch?" And I was like, "All right, yeah, you can." Nice guy, been lawn mowing since he was 12. Pimply face, scrawny kid, hadn't stopped. And anyway, he hired me to write some flyers, 2-page flyers, and some door hangers and stuff for him. And so I did that. And a couple of years later, interviewed him. And at that point, he was sending out around 1 million pieces of direct mail a year.
Wow.
Why? Because it was working. It was a license money. It was like owning the casino.
Yeah.
He went from, you know, doing okay in Denver, Colorado, to the biggest in the entire state of Colorado and in the top 10 in the entire country. from me changing the offer, presenting him in a different way, and obviously, the rest that goes with it. But I mean, and so I just adapted that for the landscaping industry. And of course, guess what? It still works, same as pest control, a pest control guy, the 2-page formula is about 85%. It just changes variables. And a termite client, I just called as a termite investigation report, put a value on it, charged for it. For every letter mailed at the time when I did that, which was costing him 50 cents back then, he was returning $18 per every letter dropped into a letterbox.
Wow.
Not a bad return on your money.
Mate, that's awesome.
From just presenting, instead of doing the old free quote, right? Done it for poor maintenance guys as well. I mean, I love doing it,
Yeah.
So, eventually it'll be in a software, but it's still a bit old school, but it works. Especially today, it works even better.
Yeah. A lot of people who listen to the podcast want to know what we do over at Master Dealmaker Secrets. And effectively what we do is we work with sales professionals and business owners all over the world who are seeing massive increases in their top line sales revenue. So we help business owners and sales professionals to effectively focus on the 3 key drivers to growing sales revenue in your business. The first one is controlling the message that you send out into the marketplace so that potential clients see and hear and read what you do as an opportunity as opposed to your competitors. The second thing that we do is we help you to create a direct path to the 20% of your ideal clients that will deliver 80% of the revenue. So everyone knows the 80-20 rule. We help you to develop a direct path to the 20% of the people that are going to give you 80% of your sales revenue in your business. And the third thing that we allow you to do, that we create a process for, is for you to be able to double the amount of leads that you get that convert into paying clients. So if this is of interest, we do have an application-only process to become involved in this particular program. And to get to there, all you need to do is to go to www.johnblakescall.com. So it's JOHNBLAKESCALL.com, and there's a couple of questions to answer there. And then what you'll do is get on a quick conversation with me, and I can find out a little bit more about what you've got going on in your business and see potentially whether what you are doing would be a fit for what we could help you with. And at that point, I can extend an invitation if it's a fit, and you can make the choice to come on board or not. So that's the opportunity. That would be the next step if you're looking at how you can take things to the next level. If you're enjoying what you're hearing on the podcast, if you're getting value from it, I invite you to do that, and I will look forward to talking to you. The website is www.johnblakescall.com. Talk to you soon. It's funny because it's like a new toy, and that I wrote a post about this the other day. So Chachi BT came out on November the 30th, and by January there were all these experts.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's
right.
Like the gold rush days.
10,000 hours, right? If you worked 24 hours a day is 1.3 years
to be an expert. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That's if you did it every day, 24/7. It's 1.3 years. And there were experts on this thing by January. So, but the thing that cracks me up is that, I've had a couple, because I write stuff for clients, like I put together phone scripts and, and cold emails and all sorts of stuff like that. And what I've noticed lately is that there's been a couple of people that, you'll write and go, look, I know this works. I've used it. It's tested. This is my best crack at how we should start. Right. It's like, oh, well, I just got Chachi BT to do it and it's good. And then I look at it and I go, good. And my take on it is that Chachi BT is like an enthusiastic rookie at best. You look at the stuff
Yeah,
and you just go,
I haven't even got it, to be fair.
oh,
Right.
mate, I've probably looked at two or three things. And the other day, I got it because one of the things that we've started doing is finding salespeople for clients. And I received application for one of these roles that we're looking for, and I could tell that the cover letter was written by just, it's like it's the same. It's the same thing that happens when you look at a girl that's got shit in her face.
Yeah. Ain't nobody got time for that.
It's like, you got shit in your face, right? And it's like, you see the cover letter and you just go, that was written by Chachi BT. It's the exact same.
Yeah, it is. And that's a perfect, it's before, after.
Yeah.
Like,
it's the perfect
AI,
analogy, right?
real person, right? Yeah. But here's what's interesting is, and yeah, the whole expert thing, and I've bitten my tongue. You're only the second person I've spoken about it. I did a podcast interview the other week, and I was like, well, I mean, she was asking me more about copywriters and stuff, and I was like, well, if you're quite newbie and you don't know how to sell yourself, yeah, I mean, you've got to innovate, or you could be out of business. But I think it's a great research tool and to speed up the process. But at the end of the day, just like a company never makes a decision. A company does not write a check.
No.
Right? It's humans that within that company make the decision. The same as with, at the end of the day, AI doesn't make the decision.
No.
Right? Whoever you present it to is going to make a decision whether to accept it or not, or to test it. But yeah, all the expert that came out reminded me of the gold rush days where, everyone's selling the pans and the shovels to the gold miners, right, making their fortunes. But those same people are pretty much all on crypto and every other shiny object.
Yeah,
that's great. It's not my market, not my audience. They're not people I want to be buying my stuff anyway.
No.
So good luck to them.
Look, I think it has utility, as you've pointed out. But in terms of replacing, the copywriting function, I think there's a long way to go.
Yeah. It's definitely, I think it could be a good research tool and cut a lot of the process down, but it's just like garbage in, garbage out. Ask the wrong thing, it's going to give you the wrong answer. But I haven't even bothered to get it. I don't write copy for clients anyway. I take the projects on and give it to former mentees. And if they want to, they can do for research, but don't ever give me copy for a client that you've used AI on, or you're dead in the water.
No, exactly. Exactly. So, so what's your take on, because, offer is massive, right? If you change the offer, you change the maths. And one of my favorite offer formulas, and obviously a mutual mentor of ours, Trevors, Sago, he talks about, the offer being the old plan versus the new plan. And the new plan needs to be something that they can't get, from anywhere else. But the other formula that I use is, offer equals product plus bonuses plus terms. Are there any other sort of formulas that you use that you find work really well?
Well, obviously, I'm quite new in the Trevors world, and I'm loving it. Right? It's definitely hard.
He's
amazing. Hard adjustment after 20 odd years of doing what I'm doing. But I did a post today. I'm sure if maybe you check it out later, because it gave a lot of clarity for something I'm about to put out.
Yeah.
But it's very different, but I get it. At the same time, the old way of, there's 24 modules and there's this and there's that. People are, holy shit, it's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
Whereas we used to think, the more we stack on and the longer it is, all that sort of stuff. And it's not the case,
No.
and the proof is there. And so what was interesting about my question today was that, I've always used a proposal to close clients. Stems back from my banking days, I was approving a loan. So in my last job, my last position, I could sign off $1 million myself secured or 10% unsecured. My boss and I was the 2IC in this quasi bank. We could sign off And between him, myself, and the regional manager, we could sign off 5 million between the three of us, or 500,000 unsecured, right?
Yep.
It was always proposal. So when I went into copywriting, I secured my first ever copywriting client at 10,000 Aussie dollars using a proposal.
Yep.
Right? I'd never written for anybody before. And he was actually the Aussie guy in the secret. So I've always used proposals. And those first, from 2001 till basically sometime in 2012, I used more of a generic proposal document. And then I'd do a sort of a 2 or 3 page snapshot cover. Hey, nice to talk to you, John. This is what we discussed. This is what I'm going to do. Here's the fees. Read the generic offer document, which worked well for the first, basically 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I changed it sort of quite dramatically. And when I changed it, I mean, even prior to that job, I would just, I would get the fees I wanted. It was, I had no problem getting the bigger fees. But when I changed the format, presented it a different way. My proposals pretty much close around 90%, whether it's a copywriting project or a mentoring project at the fees that I want to charge. Now, I've had people that, if I know they're talking to 4 or 5 different copywriters, I go, you know what, I'm not interested.
Yeah,
but, I know sometimes they're talking to somebody else. And I've quoted one particular weight loss client in Germany. I quoted them 38,000 euros up front on a proposal to do a VSL. And I got the job, I didn't write it. I got one of my writers to do it. The power of presenting and positioning yourself, because most people, let's talk sex. Most people's offer a position is missionary, very vanilla, and wonder why they either don't convert the way they want to, or they convert at very low prices. When you do the Kama Sutra, right, you convert much higher, right?
You
get much
or the
more
reverse cowgirl.
Yeah, you get much more satisfaction and more money in the bag, right? I love the sense of humor, the banners. But it's
You
exactly
opened that door,
true.
I had to go in there.
I know, yeah. Speaking of the door opening, but it just works. And then I didn't realize until around, must be, 5 years ago now, that proposal document that I was sending out to close my own deals is actually a valuable document, right, to teach it to others. So I started teaching done with you, charging a fee, and watching all my copywriters that I mentored a truckload since about 2006. 85% of them would double their fees in the first 3 months from the implementation of it. Right. Then I've had consultants. I had a consultant go from 15% conversion to 60% in around 3 months, or a 400% increase and higher fees just by following a proven process.
Wow.
Right. Now, that same guy's daily rate went from £1,500. It's now £20,000.
Wow.
Right. By presenting himself in a different way. And so I'm in the process of, teaching this and leveraging from it, because I don't mentor anymore. I don't do one-to-one stuff. I don't even do group. And I clearly don't want to mentor copywriters, but I'll give them the tools to be able to charge more. And here's what's interesting. I started to get a bit of feedback from people. I didn't know the results. And one guy taught it 2 years ago for free. He was in a bad spot and I knew him. I was like, look, just implement it. Do me a favor and implement it. I did a post about 2 months ago, and this is where I first heard his results. He's like, yeah, man, you might not, because I'd forgotten about it. He goes, you might not remember, I was in a bad spot and you offered to teach me for free. He goes, it's like the best thing it made. I hate closing, which a lot of people hate closing regardless of the industry. He goes, you made it seamless, painless. And he goes, I went from average $5,000 per copywriting project, regardless of the scope, to between 10 to 25,000, depending on the scope, based on what you taught me.
Yeah.
Someone else chimes up, oh yeah, I implemented a fraction of that, and I went from, I normally would quote 3 and I got 13.5 grand.
Yeah.
And my mentoring clients, part of the mentoring process was I had to review their proposals before they sent them off. If they didn't send them off and I found out, well, mentoring's done and dusted. Right? Them's the rules. Because a lot of times, and this happens to people in business, they'll still err on the side of caution and not put a high enough fee in. What if they say no? Well, we've already discussed this. What if they say yes, sunshine? And every single time I would just change the figure at the stroke of a key and go, send that. Fee got accepted. Could be an extra couple of grand, could be $3,000. But the classic was a guy in Tassie who was quoting a guy in the US. So he's like, well, the US conversion is going to put this amount of money in my bank account. And he was going to quote the good old, 7,997, call it $8,000. I just changed it to 13. Send it off. Said, now send it. It was accepted like almost immediately, which means I probably could have pushed the envelope a little bit.
Yeah, it was a little bit underbaked. Yeah.
Yeah, but he was going to happily would have accepted $8,000. And in hindsight, I could have pushed it for, probably at
15.
least to 17, 15 minimum, maybe 17. They might have booked, but 15 they would have taken.
Yep.
Right. But this happens all the time. People are nervous to go, oh, what if they say no? What if they say yes? When I send my proposals off, I just go, here it is. Everything's in here so you can make an informed decision, including the fees either way.
Yep.
I'm good either way.
Yeah.
Give them 3 days and roll them into a 3-step email sequence, modeled off 3-step direct mail sequence. That's it.
Yeah.
But it can be a game changer. I mean, you go from, let's say someone, I don't care what your business is, doing 8 quotes a month, right? And you're closing at, whatever your close rate is. Imagine that same close rate, no increase in leads, same number of leads, yet you're doubling your fees. What will that do to a business owner?
Yeah, even if you don't get the same conversion rate, you'll still do better.
Yeah, everyone does, but even to go, okay, let's say you don't increase it.
Yeah.
And the classic was another guy that I was actually mentoring, and on 2 separate things. And sometimes we'd mentor on the business that him and his wife had, and he's in that business to consumer stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, we're getting the leads, but our conversions are low. Don't know what to do. And I was like, well, just do this. You did it for your other business. He's like, oh, hadn't thought of that. He'd blanked on it, right? Did his own version of it. He was happy to report 3 months later a 260% increase in conversions without any increase in leads. No additional ad spend, nothing, doing nothing different except presenting the offer in a completely different way so the prospect could make an informed decision either way.
Yeah, perfect. What I find is that, one of those massive financial leaks is that, people put proposals together, but they don't actually present them.
Yeah.
I've found like I've worked out at least 10 strategic advantages to actually making a time with the person and going through the actual offer with them, either on Zoom or face-to-face, or at the very worst on the phone, to give them the heads up on it. Like that can increase your conversions. Like just doing that one thing, rather than you flick it through, might go to junk. First thing they're going to do, they open it, click through to the bottom line, look at the number.
Yep.
So presenting is massive, and hardly anyone does it.
Presenting will close more via Zoom. For the landscape gardeners, landscape gardeners, we had some pool builders in there as well. They went from, doing okay, but they're quoting 150, like a minimum pool in the UK is 150,000 pounds. Yeah,
it would be.
Right. They're closing. These pool guys, when they visit the brothers, they were closing pools at that, 150 to 200-300 using this same format.
Yeah.
Right. So it's, I'm excited to get it into more people's hands. But yeah, you're right. The way you present it, most people just go, here it is. Like when I send mine off, I say, just acknowledge that you've got it and there is an expiration date. And if it's through Facebook, I'll tell them there as well. And then I follow it up. I give them 3 days. That's it.
Yeah.
Right. Because then I can go into the follow-up email and the follow-up email. And, but most people don't do that. And a classic was a woman that took on a few copywriting proteges years ago, not at full fees, lower fees, but then they had to write for my clients for free,
Yep.
And so I could leverage the difference there. And so I had this one woman who came right out of corporate world, and she just hated the way mine was done. And So she wouldn't use it until she hit a roadblock and couldn't get into that 10+K figure mark.
Mm-hmm.
Got rejected a couple of times, and she was, bent out of shape. So we jump on a call. I was in Poland at the time living, and she's like, yeah, I was batting about 1,000, blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, you're batting 1,000 because you're mostly closing people on the call anyway, and giving them basically a clinical corporate quote to wrap up what you almost close them on the call. And it's not going to work when you get into those bigger fees.
No.
And her face was just went, I'm not using your stuff, blah, 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 blah. This is the short version.
Yeah.
Because it was a little bit heated. And I said, like, you know what? Just humor me. Give it a crack, And so she agreed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And a few hours later, I get this email through saying, hey, I want to go back to these two tomorrow that said no. One was for 10K, one was at 12. I don't have time to do the full version, obviously, but what do you think of this? And I go, much better than that crap you sent through. She closed both.
Yeah.
Right. From a snapshot part of the formula. And unbeknownst to me, about a week or two later, she emails her entire list, basically about the story we'd had on this mentoring call. Mm-hmm. And the way she words it might be a little bit off. She goes, and when he told me to use his system, my face recoiled as though he'd farted violently in my face after eating a plate full of Brussels sprout. This is her email to her entire list. And she's like, boom, boom, boom. But, she's like, it works. It's proprietary to him. Right. And I go, that's probably the best testimonial ever, because she was like completely against it. And you get the visual. It's like, yeah, it would be pretty bad. But it was so offensive to her to even try it.
Yeah.
But she did, and said, like, well, yep, okay, it works.
Yep.
And that happens a lot with people in business. I'm sure you've seen it. They're so stuck in their ways of presenting whatever, or their system of doing something that doesn't work yet. They just won't change.
Yep.
They're fearful. It's like the people that they know they need an assistant, a virtual assistant, a marketing assistant. They won't do it. Right. Yet they'll keep struggling, juggling all the plates until eventually you've smacked them around the head enough. Right, they either die from a brain bleed or they do it, and verbally, I mean. And then they do it. It's like, why didn't I do it sooner?
Yeah.
Well, because you weren't ready to change. You weren't ready to stop suffering. You were choosing to suffer in your business. You finally chose to stop suffering, and this is what happens.
Yeah. It's classic. I have had a couple of people that have gone, oh yeah, I sent these 2 proposals out. Like, oh, how long ago? Oh, 2 months, 3 months ago. Okay. What was the last conversation you had with them? Was this? I go, okay, do this. And like within a couple of days, both of them said yes. And then the other story that you mentioned, where I had the exact identical thing where this guy, he'd been ripped off by his previous business partners, and he was, and I went and caught up with him for a coffee because he was just in a really bad place. And he said he wanted to get into consulting, and I just gave him, verbally, didn't write anything down. I just explained it to him, the process for bringing on consulting clients. And then, just like you, didn't think much about it, totally forgot about it. Next time I bump into this guy, oh, g'day, Jack, how you going? He's like, oh, yeah, g'day, mate. I go, yeah. He goes, you know that thing you taught me? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, I have made so much money out of that.
I'm like, oh, my gift must be in the mail, is it?
What's that?
My gift must still be in the mail, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, revision
that's
is
classic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the old, what to apply and when to apply it.
Yep.
I met this woman at an event in Phoenix back in 2012, I guess. And met a few women at that event, but one became a golfer, and that's a different story. But this woman was a business coach.
Yeah.
And so it's like, hey, can I, come and spend a bit of time with you? Back then I'd talk to someone for free. I don't do it now. And so she came in to where I was located at my mate's office, and she was charging $350 an hour back then. Mm-hmm. And she wanted to get to 500. So I probed her like a proctologist without lube and made a few notes. Right. And when I was finished, I just kept like straight faced and I said, you know what, Michelle, there's no way on this earth you're worth $500 an hour, and just shut up. And her face was like, she started to tear up. I said, because you're worth at least $750 an hour, 10 hours paid up front, and this is how you're going to do it. All right. So the tears turned into happiness very quickly. She implemented what I said. She's like, immediately was getting $750 an hour, 10 hours paid in advance.
But how interesting is it that intuitively you probably picked up that she needed that pattern interrupt? Otherwise, she probably wouldn't have accepted it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. She needed to face some reality.
Yeah.
Right. And, I had my own reality back in 2009. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Barron.
Who?
A guy called Barron. He does a lot of quantum physics stuff. And I was living in Vancouver in Canada, and I was speaking at his event with a few other people. Not a whole cast of speakers. We all had like 3-hour speaking slots.
Yeah.
And so one of the guys, we caught up for beers and lunch about a week later, and he just picked up a contract not long before the event with Trump University for about $360,000 or something as a consultant. So, he knew his stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
And so we eat lunch and we're having a beer afterwards, and he goes, man, I loved your presentation. He said, but you lost credibility with me. And I was like, do tell, give it to me. And he said, well, I'm guessing everything you said about the case studies and the proof and the outrageous offers was all true. And I was like, 100%. And he said, where you lost credibility with me was when you said your hourly fee was $750 an hour. And he goes, corporates or the Fortune 500 companies would pay you $5,000 an hour for that information, for your knowledge.
Yeah.
And so we spoke about it. I said, well, that's not my market, but I'll put it to 2,000 now, like from tomorrow. And have a guess what happened when it went to $2,000 an hour? Yes, more often, and less pain in the ass clients at $750 an hour. Now, a lot of people would like to get $750 an hour, but it was a game changer. Yeah. Sometimes it takes someone else to see what you can't see.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he did for me. Right. But I was like, I owned it. I was like, all right, I hadn't thought of I was pretty happy at $750 an hour.
Yeah.
But I was much happier at $2,000 an hour.
Yeah, interesting.
And getting, mentoring. I mean, I would charge, over 3 months period, a chunk at a time, 3 payments. But it was a game changer, same as what I've done for clients, because a lot of the times we can't see the woods for the trees ourselves. We need someone else with more experience to be able to go, you know what, just tweak this, change that, whatever. And go from there.
Yeah. So, mate, I'm mindful of the time, but mate, you've shared a whole stack of gold. I'm stoked. I'm sure that everyone that listens will get a heap out of what we've talked about. How do people get in contact with you if they want to continue the conversation or hire you to help them or what?
Yeah, I mean, I've got just a straight website called smofo.com, smofo.com. It just lists a lot of my proof, and there's a really good report, the $1 Million Lobster Report.
Yep.
Which is how 2 brothers literally took the Book of the Month Club and did Lobster of the Month Club at $3,000 a pop.
Nice.
Instead of selling lobsters for $10 each. Obviously, I'm on Facebook, Trevor Toe Crook, and I have a small group, Beers, Bourbon, and Business. It's not a massive group, and that's the way I like it. But share some gold in there.
Cool.
That's really it.
Awesome.
I appreciate you having me on. It's been a blast, and
mate, thanks for coming on.
Banter as well.
Yeah, definitely a bit of humor. And mate, you've got me interested in Panama. I have to swing past.
Well, I've got a guest bedroom with its own ensuite, so. I'm on the 34th floor here. We had a bit of an earthquake today, so it was a little bit. I was like, "Whoa, this building's wobbling seriously." Although I'd hate to be on the 66th floor.
Yeah,
but still, yeah, I got the wobbles.
Yeah. Oh, hopefully there won't be too many more of them.
Nah, it's a surreal feeling. Although I had plenty of those living in Costa Rica, so you get used to it.
I bet. Awesome. All right, mate. Well, thanks so much for being on, and mate, we'll have to get you back on again soon, because I'm sure that there's more that we could chat about, most definitely.
Yep. Thanks, John.
No worries.
You've been listening to Master Dealmaker Secrets with John Blake. Subscribe to get more in-depth strategies and maximize your sales process with new episodes every other week. And double your inquiry to sale conversion with the lead flow you already have. Go to johnblakeaudio.com for his exclusive, free, no fluff audio training and companion PDF guide.